Hi, today I will interview composer from Peru, Macri Cáceres. Okay.
Hi, Sandris. Thank you for having me.
Uh, Macri, to your mind, what is good musical composition?
Mm, that's a really hard question. I think it cannot be only one thing. It can be a lot of different things, but one thing that maybe they all have in common, it's a purpose. I think you cannot make good music without a purpose, without some meaning behind. Um, Maybe that meaning can also be no meaning, but you have to keep that in mind in order to create something that is relevant. So basically it can be anything, but as long as you do it with a conscious mind behind it.
Can you give me some example, maybe of last piece which you think which you
Yes, for example, I always like to create my pieces based on a concept, um, which is like my composer side, because I'm also a performer and I'm an improviser. So I also create music without a concept in some ways. But as a composer, I usually like to first um, think a lot of what's my piece going to speak about, what its meaning is going to be, and how the way that I transform or incorporate the sounds during the piece, it's going to keep the people hearing it in a specific atmosphere or in a specific mood or in a specific mindset, especially, like thinking of something that is going to take them somewhere.
got it? And what is, let's say, your musical signature or musical ideas which you usually you feel you came back right frequently?
Right now, or at least during the last couple of years, I've been working a lot with um, concepts that relate to visual things, because I am usually doing graphic scores. So I try to work with images or with concept that relates to images. For example, I have this piece called Proximity, which is a piece based on the proximity of people, of feeling close to one another, but not in a good way, like a closeness, but in a way of feeling restricted. Like I live in a city where everything is really near, where people are really close to each other in the way they live and the way they do their everyday thing. Always public transportation is cramped. Always just like you're feeling like you're having a person next to you the whole time. So it's not a comfortable space to be in. And so I started by taking photographs of the city, of things that would visually feel like where you could feel that proximity. And so it was pictures of housings all to cramp together, that we have a lot of those here, of windows of building and apartments that were really close to one another. Of we have this light system here, where you can see all the cables on the streets. So it's not like you don't see the cables from TV or from the internet. You can see all of those, and they're all like a mass of cramped cables and with knots and everything. So it's not a pretty view, and it's also a reflection of how everything is connected here. It's just like a big mass of things that it doesn't have an order. And also traffic and everything that you can see in the city that would give me that feeling. I started by taking photographs of all of that, and then I deconstructed the images. I worked them through a process of data bending. So I started editing the data of the pictures, really not knowing what the result was going to be. So it was also like a randomness into the piece. Um, and I turned out with images that were not like the original ones, but they changed in shapes and in colors. And I used parts of those images to create the score. So based on the images, I started to do the creation process of the sounds, and it's like a circle. I usually start with an image, and then the image would follow or would give me a following sound, and then when I'm working through that sound and I'm shaping it the way I want it for the piece, then the sound will give me some details, and the image, maybe it will change. It would change color, or it would change shape. So it's like a process that is always in like a circle. It will always be changing until the end of the piece, until the piece is ready. So it's always one thing changes another in my composition process until the very end.
So you consider yourself as multimedia composer, right? Then
What, sorry?
Multimedia composer.
Yes, I will consider myself a multimedia composer.
And I understand that you not only work with visuals, but only work with the text, right? Even you have a in your homepage, I found out that the combination of two words, sound poetics, right?
Yes, there's a lot of poetry also in my work. I actually, it's pretty funny because I discovered that during the pandemic, I realized that I also really enjoyed working with words, and so I just started writing. I never thought I could be a really good writer, or that I could use words the way that I use sound to create something. But apparently, quarantine did that for me. So now I actually incorporate a lot of the sound of words into my pieces. I actually have this piece called Kinetic Poetry, and I actually ask for the performers not only to play their own instruments, but to speak words during the piece. So the sound of the words are also part of the whole general sound of the piece.
Yes, yes. And do you consider like some kind of that you use or that your musical language is more like in this Western tradition, new Western music?
Yes and no. I would say yes because I have a lot of influence in that way. The way my education, like my music education, the base of that, it's based on that type of music. But I also try to incorporate a lot of different other things, as I've been developing myself as a composer and as a performer. I've had the opportunity to incorporate other cultures, other points of views, other ways of understanding music. So I usually try to grab whatever I like from those aspects of understanding music, and bring them into my own musical world. So I would say yes, but not only.
And just imagine if you would live not in Peru but in Berlin all the time. You're born in Berlin or in Germany, right, and lived all the time in Germany. Would your music would be different, right?
Probably yes, but maybe I would say equally diverse, because Berlin is pretty much a multicultural city. So I would think I would have maybe more places or more ideas where I can grab other things that will interest me and I could incorporate into my musical world.
Yes, yes. And how much, let's say, your music could be, let's say, from inspired from traditional Peru music?
I would think a lot, but in the way that I conceive that that music. We have this idea of traditional Peruvian music that it's like I don't know, you can hear like a pan flute, and or we have like a pentatonic scale, or you know, those like details that all people know, you know, that the music that all tourists that come to Peru hear. So we have that traditional music, and we also have pre-Columbian music that no one really knew what it was like, but we have some instruments left, or some not recordings, but there's some work that has been done about researching that type of music. So my approach to traditional Peruvian or Latin American music goes a little bit more that way,
Yes.
on influencing the way that I create, or the inspiration that I use for creating my own flutes and whistles, which is the instruments that I mostly work with, not only for composition, not as much as, but mostly for performance and improvisation. I am a flute player, but I started constructing my own flutes in ceramics a while ago, and I really like inspiring in that tradition and in Mesoamerican tradition to create my own flutes, to have that inspiration. But the flutes that I create are not meant to be replicas, or exact, like the most exact that they can be in relation to those instruments. The way that I see it, I only use them as inspiration, and then I try to create instruments that will, like, in a way, match better with new music or with experimental music.
Yes, yes, got it. And what's your perspective or view on all this decolonization? Sorry,
Decolonization.
Yes.
Uh-huh. What's my point of view regarding that?
Composer, which like trying to get back and rebuild like pre-Columbian music, right? Or
I think it's a necessary step. I think it's important. I think we're not there yet. I think there's some people doing the effort to create a movement of decolonization. I think it's more not only specific actions, but a whole mindset. You have to change the whole mindset from one thing that it's completely the opposite to another, to a place where you can start to accept, start to rethink what were the errors, what were the things that were done in a certain way through history that created specific events and that turned into specific results, and then how all that history affected the way that we treat music, that we treat people, that we treat our reality right now, and then what can we do right now to change it. So it's, for me, yes, an important process, but not one that we can do lightly. It has to come with a whole mindset, like, that we need to change.
Can you explain all what you said, but in Peru, in Peruvian context? In your context, what does it mean?
I don't think there's a specific Peruvian context of decolonization. I mean, regarding music specifically?
Music, yes.
Yeah. Not really. I mean, we're just starting to like, we're behind on the process. We're not even there yet. We're in a place where we have built a really big musical scene, or even less an academic musical scene, and then we can start to deconstruct from there. We're not even there yet to begin a process of deconstruction.
Yes,
We're starting the process of construction.
But right, at least as I understand, in Colombia, right, is this music which, let's say, is colonial. It came from Spanish, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So and then there is some kind of a lot of good music and interesting musical phenomena before that, right? And then there is trying
Yes.
to some kind of historically understand what's there and reconstruct, right? How
Mm-hmm.
in Peru?
I don't think there's a lot of people in Peru, and I don't think there's many people in Peru um, doing that work. I think there's only a few, and as I told you, the scene of academic like new music or experimental music, it's really really tiny. Colombia has right now a bigger scene than we have here in Peru. Has had a history of, I mean, festivals that have um, um, in that have a lot of years, like a festival that we have every year, you know, that's something that keeps on going through the years. That's something, for example, that we don't have here in Peru. We have maybe one project that comes one year and then you don't see it anymore, and then that project dies because there's no one to support it. So Colombia, it's a lot of steps further away than us in that process, and I think they have more history to look behind, that they have already been constructed during these years, so they can start maybe a process of decolonization. I'm not sure which is the reality right now in Colombia regarding their own process of decolonization in music. But I think maybe from what I know and I can say about Colombia, if I compare it with Peru, is that they have done a lot more during these last, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years. They have more composers, they have more academic musicians, they have more orchestras. I mean, they have more history in this type of music, and they're in a place where they can stand and look behind and evaluate. They have more to evaluate. We don't.
Yes, and if you if you were a man, would your music would be different?
No, I think well, yes, but not because I'm a man. I think my experiences, like my life experiences, would be different because society would perceive me different. I perceive myself as a queer person, so in a way, I also perceive myself as what one would call a man, but society perceives me as really feminine.
Yes,
So my life experiences are the ones of a feminine perceived person.
yes,
So if I were a man, my life experiences would be probably different. So I would have maybe other ways of seeing life, other priorities in my head, other I don't know if other feelings regarding some topics or some things or some people. So yes, probably my music would have different topics. Maybe that. I don't think it would sound different because my sensitivity and my approach to music probably would be pretty much the same, because all the things that have impacted me into becoming like the composer that I am in a way. Like, for example, I started using ceramic instruments and starting to looking more at pre-Columbian instruments, because orchestral instruments, like from the regular orchestra, at some point weren't enough for me and weren't close enough to my heart. So I don't think that, for example, would have changed if I would have been perceived as a man rather than a female by society.
would you consider your music as feministic one?
Um, Not really. I think because I don't think I even have a piece that has a specific topic that is considered feminist. Um, I think my music can be feminist because I am. I mean, I consider myself a feminist person, even though there's a lot of feminisms and a lot of, you know, for some people, maybe I won't be a feminist. I don't know. But I think my music can be considered that because I consider myself that, but not because they they have specific feminist topics.
And right, you identified with yourself as multimedia composer.
Yes.
And what's the difference to be multimedia composer with composer who just composes like for acoustic instruments, let's say?
For me, I mean, from my point of view, I think it gives you more freedom in a way. It gives you more opportunities to do different things, to explore your curiosity. If you're a curious person, if you like to do a lot of things and you don't really enjoy one type of art or one only way of doing things, that for me it's the benefit of being a multimedia artist. It can allow you like to
Yes.
have more tools in a way.
But I have heard ideas that, that if there is a more tools, it's more saturation, it's more harder for audience. So, so then it's a question of the balance, right? How you find the balance between what's a good way how to balance between media, right? Between visual and sound and
Yeah, I know that at some point it can maybe too much. I don't know if I've created something at a point in my life where I've put too much into one thing, like people had video and audio at the same time and performance and everything. Maybe it was too much. I don't know. We created a concert a couple of years ago with Uwe Dirksen, and he's a trombone player, a really good one from Germany, and with an ensemble here in Peru. And we did this really crazy concert where we mixed academic music and Peruvian music and jazz, and we have lights and piano and singing and everything just like mixed together. We have a microtonal guitar and ceramic instruments and the trombone, and everything was like kind of crazy, and performance also. So people here are not used to that. We could see that the public was kind of, okay, I think this is a little bit too much for me, but in the end it was something new for them. It was entertaining, and they in the end they liked it. Maybe it depends on where are you presenting, or who's your public, so maybe it can be too much media, like too much multimedia things, or not. No, here in Peru you have to be a little bit careful because people are not used to all this like all these things, or all these events happening at the same time, where they need to pay attention to video and to hear the thing and to see the performer, and at the same time you have a dancer, and at the same time they have to read text, and everything is in circles and whatever. So for here in Peru, for the Peruvian public, maybe yes, that's a little bit too much. But for example, maybe in Berlin they're used to 5 or 6 things happening at the same time in a performance, and that's okay.
yes.
So yeah.
Yes, but what's the biggest difference to your mind between multimedia and let's say acoustic music?
I think it's the focus. In acoustic music, I think you center your focus on the performer or the music itself. You center. It's like a one-way thing where you, not a one-way thing, but a thing where you just do like this motion, just like go to a specific point. But in multimedia, for me, it's like you do this different motion, like you open your view to everything that's happening around. So it's two different types of viewing, of seeing or embracing what you're in the situation that you're at. Yes.
And how your music changed in the last 10 years?
I think it has changed a lot. I think I'm in a process where I'm just beginning to find my voice as a composer. I think with the passing of the years, I'm becoming more comfortable in mixing the different elements that I like and the different things that I enjoy doing. For example, graphic scores, for example, the building of my own instruments, the specific topics or concepts that I like to work with, this multimedia process that I like, and working with video and editing my own videos and working with photography or with performers or dancers or poetry. So I think a couple years ago, I was kind of worried that I wouldn't have the space in my own music to be able to connect all those things or to create one single persona that could fit them all into one. But now I think I'm a little bit more confidence. I have a little bit more confidence that I can use all the things. I don't have to use them all at once, and I can actually have all those as tools and use them whenever I want and incorporate them in different ways. I think I'm becoming better at incorporate them in the correct moment. So yeah, I think that's been my process so far and my growth.
And what kind of, let's say, hardware and software you use most frequently?
What kind of
technologies you use most frequently?
Well, what kind of technologies? Usually software for editing audio and video. That's what I usually use.
It's Max
for. Sorry.
You are you using this Max or?
I've used Max. I don't use it like normally. I've used it for a couple pieces, yes, for live electronics, but only for two of my pieces. Then usually my media is fixed media, and then we would also see if like how do we interpret technology, because for me technology is also the constructing of my flutes and the knowledge that I use for constructing the flutes. So that's also technology for me.
Yes, got it. And can you tell me a little bit about the process of constructing? You are constructing on your own, right? The flutes.
Yes, I learned from Dimitri Manga. He's a musician here from Peru. He builds also his own flutes. He has done a really interesting work in recreating pieces from the museum here in Lima, and he's a really interesting musician. He taught me how to construct, or the basis of how to work with ceramics and the abilities for creating these types of flutes. And I usually start by thinking on the resulting sounds that I want on one side. If I want, for example, a flute that is going to sound, that is going to have like a low sound or a really high sound, that's going to be affected by the size of the instrument. So if I want a whistle that it's really high, I'm going to really create a really small whistle. So the size is going to give me the altitude of the notes. If I want a flute that I want it to be like a low flute with a lower sound, I'm going to create a bigger size flute. It can be tubular or globular regarding the shape, and maybe if I wanted to have finger holes or not, if I want to to have the opportunity of changing notes, then I'll add the finger holes. I usually like in my flutes this phenomenon of the harmonics of the notes crashing together and creating these other sounds. So I usually try to use notes that are really close together to one another, so I can create different types of sounds. And the good thing when you're working with ceramics is that you can try different things, and if you don't like, you can try them while you construct them. And if you don't like the sound, or you prefer a different type of resulting note, then you can just put more clay on top and just close that hole and do another one a little bit lower or higher, or wherever you want it to be. So that's kind of the process. And I have also used some ideas, or I have some influence of Mesoamerican flutes. So I also really like creating double, triple flutes. So they're not just single ones, but double or triple. And for this summer, I'm planning on creating a fourth, like a one flute that has four flutes attached one to the other, so the four of them can be played together.
Okay, got it. And what you fear the most as composer?
What I fear the most?
Yes.
Mm,
A composer fear, right?
yeah, composer fear. Um, I don't know, maybe running out of ideas. Maybe just having like a mind blockage that will keep me from being able to create. And I won't write anything or create anything for a couple months or years, or I don't know, maybe that's a fear. I think for a creator it's a common fear, perhaps. But I think I think I had that fear a couple years ago, but lately I've realized that the more I'm in connection with other people, with other, not only composers, but with other musicians, with other people from different countries, from different places, from different mindsets, that have different mindsets. I would always have like ideas, or I will always have these opportunities for creating spaces, not music, but spaces, like create a concert, or create a online festival, or create I don't know, a video, or a documentary, or just like these connections that will allow me to be in, or be a part of spaces that will give me the ideas to create.
Yes.
So yes.
And why do you still compose?
And why do I still compose? I think because it's a part of how I see the world. It's the way that I have of grabbing things from the world and making them mine and giving something back. I always like to create something like in a way back, because maybe some things in the world, they can be beautiful or they can be important, but when I put them through the process of going through me and my own experiences and my own points of view, and I give them back to the world, I think I can add them something. So I think there's enough value in that for me to keep creating things.
And how new music as a landscape change in Peru in last 20 years, right? Or 20, already 21 year, right?
I think it didn't change much until the last maybe 6 or 7 years, that all the not all, but a couple of universities started to have music schools. You before that, you didn't have the opportunity of being a music student in a university in Peru.
Okay.
You only had the conservatory. And so the Universidad de Ciencias Aplicadas, it's UPC university, and the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú, which is the PUC University in Peru, they both started their music schools in the same year. And from that on, there's been a lot more movement in the music scene. There's been a lot more composers, and this young generation of composers, we are the ones that are creating more spaces, more concerts, more even more groups. Like we've realized that we need to work as a community. So we have now groups here in Lima. There's a group in Arequipa. There's a group in Cusco that it's a few composers. We're not more than 10 per group, like 12 per group. And those are all the composers of that age that are in the city, you know, in the whole city, just like this tiny group of composers. But those are the ones that are creating the concerts, that are trying their best to make their music sound. So I think the last couple of years, the scene has changed a lot. And just these last 2 months, even with the pandemics, there's a lot of things that have been created during the pandemics and that have been born in a virtual way. But maybe, who knows, it's like an effort that has been restrained because of the virtual world. But maybe now that we can do more things that are not virtual, maybe in the following years the scene will change even more, you know.
Got it. And how musical languages of new music in Peru changed, right, in this century?
I think what most of us do has only two ways. One is staying with the influence of classical and academic music that comes from Europe, and that's what one wants to do. And the others, they also use that, but add like Peruvian elements. It can be rhythms or concepts or instruments, and they do it in some different ways, you know, some more like on a not on a deeper level, like more into the conception of the music, and more that are more well connected to the other traditions, but some just in a shallower, to say in some way, level, just like maybe a couple rhythms, or just to use one instrument from traditional Peruvian music and put it in there, you know, just like a tiny thing that it's Peruvian, and just mix it in that way. You know, some do it in more a deeper way, and some in a more detailed, but just a couple things of Peruvian mix there. But that's the two main things, so the two main roads that we usually go here.
Yes. And is it the music become more, let's say, individualized, or like composers are trying to create not so much influence from others, but create their own, let's say, languages, or they are more multimedia or technology based?
I think now, speaking about the younger generation of composers, yes, there's a lot of multimedia artists. There's people working with video, working with technology, with Max, working with other disciplines, also working with poetry, also working with performance, and with dance, and all this different type of things with visual arts. and there's a lot of use of electronics also. There's more use of electronics than in previous years. More people use it now, so yes, I think that's a step in that direction.
And how would you define that music in your words? What is that music? You know,
Like the music of
for
all the
acoustic music, right? Then you have a tonal music, atonal music. Then you have, I don't know, different kind of serial music and etc. But what is that music which new generation brings on the table?
I think it would be multidisciplinary music. I think that would be the main characteristic.
Okay, got it. And how audience of new music changed in last?
I don't think it has changed much. Audience is one of the things that has remained the same way, sadly. People here are not used to listen to this type of music. They usually don't understand it, so that's why also there's a small movement of people, myself included, that has developed certain spaces where general public can learn about this type of music, about the history of academic music and classical music and all these types of music during history, and being for them to be able to understand how do we went from, I don't know, Mozart to these sounds that I create right now. So because people don't have that knowledge, they don't understand that journey. So they listen to music now from young composers here in Peru, and they won't understand it, and they won't like it because actually they don't understand it. So I think public hasn't changed really much during these last years. There's been efforts for them to gain more knowledge in order to change a little bit more. But yes, we are still a public that, even that, I don't know, to put a silly example, we clap between movements in the theater. So we don't have a tradition of really knowing that type of music and knowing how to listen to this type of music.
What and what is future trends? Where is Peruvian new music goes? Let's say what it will be in 2040.
Mm, I think I think with a little bit of luck, we will be able to acknowledge more of the richness of our own culture and of our own tools, not in a touristic type of way, but in a really deeper type of way, and add it to our music on a way. And I would love to see that we have the option of using European music as a base for adding that, but have it as an option, not as our only source of influence.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. And what is to your what's your perspective, right? What is role of new music in Peru society?
I don't think it has a role in society. I think our society has a lot of social, economic, political, and etc. problems enough. So new music or academic music, it's not a important topic for mostly anyone, but the ones that we do that type of music. So as a society, it doesn't really have a place in society. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's only like uh, music for this music community.
Yeah, usually yes. Or if you try to create the spaces but you have to put in the effort to create a space specifically for people to get to know that music or to relate to that music in a different way, that it would be easier to accept for them, or teaching space or those type of spaces. Yes, but you have to do the effort to create them yourself, because it's not like the Peruvian government is going to give you the space to go and do it. You have to create it for yourself.
Thank you very much for this interview. It was a huge pleasure for me.
For me too. Thank you very much also.